Sean, David, Morton. Hey, welcome everybody to the show. Transmitting live from the bowels of Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada. I came out here because there's a couple of fun things happening. There may be we're talking about some actual syndicated radio that actually pays money. So that's a good thing. So we're chatting with some people about that, about getting on a show. Be kind of fun. They were actually talking about doing some pre-recorded stuff, like 2 hours a night from 10 to 12, pre-recorded, mind you. But then I would feel bad because then I would smear George Snorri and Fat Tom Dumbheiser. Oh well, nice lady. I should actually get Fat Tom Dumbheiser on my show, so he could be like my henchman, my minion, my bell ringer.
Hey, getting jealous.
Yeah, they're good. See, I would have you play him though. It would be a character, or you come in with like your most different, like heavy metal voice, and it's like no, Fat Tom Dumbheiser, and you would come up with some horrible voice like Chris on Family Guy, which was Seth Green. Seth Green looking in the mirror one day, and he just came up with this voice, shaving in the mirror, where he's like, he started talking like this, and of course, he's managed to make an entire career out of it.
Seth Green's actually explained that he made Chris. He literally was doing like what an adolescent Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs would sound like, and that's Chris. That's literally what Seth Green said is what Chris's voice is. It's Buffalo Bill as like a 13-year-old.
And puts the lotion in the basket. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. He said he was just fooling around with it one day, and now he's made like a 10-year career out of it.
Exactly.
So anyway, so that's cool. I'm also at the Toastmasters International accredited speakers. So I thought it looked interesting, and I have some friends out here with me, and they said, come on out. And we're talking to the people here. It looks very cool. Actually, Toastmasters is an organization that's worldwide, and they have accredited speakers, and they fly these people all over the place. And it helps people in business. It helps people who are shy. It helps people with presentations, and it helps people communicate more effectively. And if there's anybody that's all about communicating more effectively, well, it's the Sean. So there it is. Now,
what was that? I wasn't listening.
Now, okay, I'm going to kick off the show. I hope you're listening at the top of the hour, and I'm going to kick off the show with something that you really, really need to hear. Now, I'm just going to tell you that I have sources that are awe-inspiring. They are people in news, people in politics. They are, let's just say, and they are not, I don't know any other way to say this, they are not bullshit sources. They are not sources. They're not the David Wilcock sources. They're not the, whoever else is out there, quoting, Monkey Man from Mars or whoever it is. These are legitimate people. These were people when I was working at Hard Copy, when I was working when I was consulting for Unsolved Mysteries. I never actually got a show on the air at Unsolved, but I worked on all kinds of things that I pitched them every day as a freelance producer. But in the Hard Copy days and the Strange Universe days and all that, and then from Area 51 and my newsletter from back in the day. So all I can tell you is that in my book, Sands of Time, Book 1 and Book 2, and if you haven't gotten them yet, and by the way, I want to sincerely apologize because every time we print a run of these books, they sell out. We just can't keep them on the shelves. And we put them up there because they have a 5-star rating on Amazon. We've got something like 300 5-star comments up on Amazon and out there on the web of people. I mean, there's this huge cult that's actually risen up around the books. Then I've explained a little bit of the origin of the books as well, that I had a gentleman that turned out to be one of the top, if not the top, global director for kind of the inside shadow government, if you will. And he moved on. I was told he moved on. I was never told he died. I was told he moved on, and I was then bequeathed these journals of his inner thoughts and adventures, and it all has to do with 5-1 and the Dulce Mesa and the development of the Zeitlaufen or Time Runner, as it's also called, and assimilating German technology and all this. And by the way, you folks would be very proud of me. I had to spend all day yesterday at the stinking Department of Motor Vehicles, which should just be the GDMV, the goddamn Department of Motor Vehicles. And So I'm on section 2 of book 3 now, and what I'm doing is I'm taking the journals and I'm incorporating a large amount of other material that actually came with the journals that weren't written by him particularly, but actually then go into the different projects. And there's sort of like there'd be like a footnote, and that footnote would then lead to a stack of paper that would have to do with a project, or a lot of it having to do with what's called the Die Glock, which was in essence the heart of a flying saucer that they were messing around with, that it turns out could actually create energy called solutons. And these solutons were time energy as a wave, if you will. So the Germans were monkeying around with this. One of the people that was actually the director of the Die Glock project was a man by the name of Colonel Wolf Davis, and he was bundled in with the other German Nazi scientists when we captured Peenemünde. This was the main V2 rocket base where you had Werner von Braun and all these scientists. Now of the German scientists, supposedly, this is what actually happened. What actually happened is that the Russians got half the German scientists. The Americans got the other half of the German scientists. The German scientists that came here, they covered up because of the outrage. I mean, here George Patton got crucified in the press because he was saying that he would work with Nazis after the war, that if they were just run-of-the-mill Nazis and had fought for their country, if you will, that he saw no reason not to employ Germans that had actually belonged to the Nazi party. He was crucified in the press for that. But what the secret government did is they took all the scientists and then they brought them to the United States. A group of them escaped through what was called the Nazi rat line, which was a deal that they made with the Vatican, where the Vatican, in exchange for apparently a whole bunch of money and gold and artwork, managed to put up what was called the Nazi rat line. There was a movie that was done about this based on a book, which was by, can't remember now, but it was called the Odessa File. And the Odessa File actually described the Nazi rat line, as they called it, and how they escaped primarily through the Vatican, including some people say that Hitler also did, and that he was long gone by the beginning of 1944, and that a group of doubles were actually put in his place to kind of run the country and run the war. And actually, oddly enough, when Hitler was removed and things were then turned over to the German High Command, the Germans actually started winning the war. I mean, that was the whole Blitzkrieg and the Battle of the Bulge and all that other stuff. So in the course of this, just so you know, just so you'll all be proud of me, I am now about almost 500 pages into book 3. So I finished section 1, went back and kind of re-edited it, and now I've actually had some time here in Vegas alone by myself where I don't have to worry about all the stuff that my beloved wife Melissa throws at me every day, including, oh, come look at the cat, they're doing something cute. Oh, look, they left the cute poop in the box.
Or look at Steve's bond paperwork.
Yeah, exactly. That too.
Yeah, you want to do that, Sean.
Well, Steve, don't you? Oh my God, don't you complain, because I've told you she has full on bronchitis, and
I told you 6 weeks ago.
All right. Well, you don't get into this with me. We're never mind. Happy to do it for you, sir. And I'm very, very sorry that I have to be here and she's as sick as she is. So anyway,
you just need the jab.
The point of it being is now this is why this is important. So another gentleman who was kind of tag team from Ted Humphrey, and not his real name. I can never really reveal his real name. Even if I told you his name was Joe Schmitz or whatever, you would not know who he is. He was one of those people that's kind of been removed. They literally remove you from time and space. If you look at the movies Men in Black, where they take off your fingerprints, they erase all your files and all of that has been done to these people. They do not exist in reality as we know it. Now, I get a letter or an email from this individual today. And he'd been off the radar he's now retired from a lot of these government shenanigans as well, but he still directly connects into, Melissa has a message for you, Steve. Due to the complaints about the free service, never mind. So, and you have no idea how hard it's been. It's been pulling teeth to get this done for you. So, anyway, so I get an email from this individual. He's now retired, but he's still pulled into consulting work and what have you. And considering some interesting things that Edgar Mitchell has been saying as well, I think this all kind of connects in. And he just went on a trip. I know that I lost contact with him for about 3 weeks, And I was a little panicked because, I never know if these guys are going to turn up dead. The last time I lost contact with him, he got like 7 bullet holes in him from a gun battle that he was in. And this guy's like a big time hands-on sort of spy. So here it is. We've been talking about the Shemitah theory. We've been talking about, and if you've been listening to the show, I think we have one of the best arguments out there that something pretty dire is going to happen between let's call it September 11th and September 15th of this year. And the reason for this, and we've plotted this out, so you're probably pretty well versed in it by now, is that if you go back this September 11th, which happens on a Friday, by the way, so it'd be Friday, September 11th. If you go back 7 years from that, you then go into September 11th of 2008. And on September 11th of 2008, between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., at the exact same time the World Trade Centers were hit in 2001, you had a gigantic financial collapse in the United States. And this was specifically because someone using a very advanced form of software had backdoored the system and basically stole $3.5 trillion out of the world economy, out of the U.S. economy and the world economy. Now, had the computers not shut down, they would have taken everything. I mean, they would have taken anywhere between $8 to $10 trillion, and Western civilization, as we know it, would have simply ceased to exist. These were the final months, by the way, of the Bush administration that then led to the election of Barack Obama. That then, it also didn't help. They put in John Insane in the Membrane, the world's angriest man, McCain, and Sarah Palin, who I think was just a group of monkeys standing on top of each other in a coat. So Obama came in as the driver, if you will, the getaway driver for the greatest crime in human history. Now, at one point, they actually pitched to Bush about pointing to the Iranians and saying that the Iranians were behind this computer hack, and Bush either couldn't comprehend it, he couldn't understand it, he couldn't get the advanced lingo that was actually needed for him to even pitch this to the people. He's like, so they didn't blow something up. They got into computers and they blew up the computers. It didn't really blow up the computers. And they basically just ditched the idea. It was sort of like when they blew up the Oklahoma City. In Oklahoma City, Bill Clinton was presented with 2 scenarios of who to blame. Scenario 1 was, here's an Iraqi guy, and the Iraqis were behind it. We could go to war with Saddam Hussein now, like we wanted. But this is way back in, 94. Or we can pin it on this Timothy McVeigh Patriot guy that we have rustling around in the weeds, and you can blame this all on the right wing and Rush Limbaugh. And Clinton was like, I'm down with that. I'm going to get my enemies. And that's kind of the one interesting thing about the Clintons, is the Clintons always went after anybody that messed with them, as opposed to the Bush crime syndicate, where they went after, they used the might and blood and treasure of the United States to enforce their own cocaine and heroin enterprises around the world. I wish just one person had pointed out at the Republican debates, and once again, if I was running or I was Donald Trump or whatever, why did no one point out that this huge foundation that Hillary Clinton is raising all this money for, or raising all this money with, which means he's taking foreign donations from the Chinese or from whatever else, it's called the Bush-Clinton Foundation, by the way. So Bush and Clinton are really good friends. I mean, I have photographs of which I found on the net, actually, but a photograph of George Wallace, Bill Clinton, and George Pappy Bush in 1983, all at a picnic with each other, showing that they're all really good buddies, that they go back a long way. This was, I think, right before Clinton actually became governor of Arkansas. This was back when he was still like an attorney general for Arkansas or something. So, all right, so be that as it may. If you go back to 7 years, so from this September 11th, you go back 7 years, we have September 11th of 2008, where we had the financial collapse. You go back 7 years before that, you of course have September 11th of 2001. You go back 7 years before that, into 94, you had, on the day, by the way, September 11th, we're actually on the 7-year Shemitah, you actually then had the collapse of the bond markets. And 7 years before that, you can go back to 1987. It was actually October, I know the date well, I think it's October 16th, the 16th, 17th of 1987. And the reason for that is there was this massive stock collapse. And that stock collapse, that date became emblazoned in my mind and in my research, because I was then able to, with incredible accuracy, predict the stock market going up through the next 10 years or so. And with this Fibonacci wave curve, I was working with an Israeli mathematician, a man by the name of Eli Aliman. And he called me. I remember a couple of times he called me on the phone and he would say, "Watch the market today. The market is going to go to 8,450." And I'm looking at it going, "Well, it's at 8,000, and there's no way it's going to jump up those, whatever those points were." I mean, he would just make some outrageous call, and I would sit there and I'd watch the computer blips in the market, and by God, if I was sitting here and it would just go zoop, right up to the point that he saw, it would stay there for a few minutes and then drop down the other side, but it would hit that mark within the space of time that he called. And I said, "This is amazing. How do you do this?" He says, "It's the unfolding wave. It's the nature of the universe. It's like we had." It's very much like the movie Pi, which is this black and white independent film, where this kid had actually figured out the secrets to the value of pi, and it actually come up with a mathematical program that enabled him to predict the stock market. And he learned it from a bunch of Hebrew rabbis, and the rabbis were then trying to kill him because he learned the secret or whatever else. It's a very weird, very strange.
I've seen it. It's amazing. It's Darren Aronofsky's first film.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, and it's Pi, right? It's just called Pi, and it's about this kid.
I think it's like PI, and like the cover is just a black cover, and it's just the Pi logo, and that's how you.
It's just a mathematical symbol of Pi, and he learns these mathematical secrets from these rabbis who can predict the market. Well, I was that kid. I mean, I was that guy that was talking to these people that was then getting up on Coast to Coast back when the show was good, and making these amazing predictions on the markets. So neither here nor there. I'm just saying that and let me read this to you because hopefully I'll have the time to do it here, but and just read it all in one piece. So, dear Sean, here he says, and once again, this is a contact, and these are people I can't tell you who they are, and I'm very sorry that I can't. It's just that they contact me under anonymity, and you only have my word that these are very, very heavy duty, very heavy people, and I'm not making them up, and it's not, Captain Tremanian who's the moon commander, or he goes to, or he's in a jump room that goes to Mars or something like that. These are legitimate government people that are on the inside. So I lost touch with them for about 3 weeks or so, and so he just contacted me today and said, "Look, everything's fine," and here's what he said. So, dear Sean, he said the Shemitah theory has been pushed a lot every few years. Well, of course, every 7 years, actually. The market corresponds to this norm with a reset. This year should not be any different. The point is, anyone that knows that this reset must happen is aware that each time the reset becomes worse and more extensive. We are sitting on two major bubbles again, and there is no way out of them without a major change in government. There is a lot of talk about all these agencies that are now moving away from the East Coast and reappearing in the Midwest and the Northern Midwest. So let me break this down. He's absolutely right. There's all this stuff that's appearing in Denver, Colorado. There's more things that are appearing in Chicago, more things that are appearing in Missouri, more things that are appearing in Texas. So all of these federal agencies, please remember, the entire federal government, this $18 trillion worth of debt and all this trouble and all this war and everything else is run by 600 people. 600, that's an oligarchy. And it's only 6 city blocks of office space. And the entire place, the entire district, as was explained by Winston Shrout last week, the entire district is only 10 square miles. That's the extent of the United States. You drop a dirty bomb, for example, a red mercury device within that, on the Supreme Court steps or the Capitol steps or whatever, and you would have to move the entire government. Now, the theory is that, well, it's not a theory, this is a fact. The fact is that the secondary federal capital for the United States is Denver, Colorado. And that's why they built that ginormous airport out there, because you can move the entire government within probably 48 hours and then actually have about 250,000 troops actually all bivouacked out on that tornado plane out by where that airport is. Now, whether you know this or not, the airport goes down about 20 levels and it interconnects with a series of high-speed ceramic jet tube supersonic trains that actually crisscross underneath the country that then allows them to get them all kinds of places. Now, and once again, this oligarchy set the limit of Congress at 400 and I always get it wrong. 400. All right. Now, this gentleman, after analysis of the Shemitah and the 7 years, and as I said, I believe that this is this coming is going to be the 49th and 50th year. I think it's a grand jubilee. It's not just the 7 years, but I think it's going to be chaos. Chaos in a good way, though, because what's a jubilee about? A jubilee is all about giving land. It's about repudiating debts and giving land and property back to people. And if you don't rest on your own, the rest will be enforced, either through sickness or breakdown or whatever else. Now, here he says, this is my friend, Agent One, whatever you want to call him, Mr. Shadow Guy. He says, we're sitting on two major bubbles again, and there's no way out of them without a major change in government. There's a lot of talk about the agencies that are moving away from the East Coast and reappearing in the Midwest and Northern Midwest. The East Coast looks like a write-off now. Clearly, we are heading straight into a race war in this country. The reason for Jade Helm 15 to be in operation right now. Now, his opinion is that Ferguson is just the beginning, that all of these places are going to explode, especially when you could also say whoever gets in as president, it's got to be a grown-up who's got to say, we have to do something about this $20 trillion debt that we have. And by the way, it's up to about $20 trillion now. It was $18 trillion in March of this year, and they simply decided to stop counting the debt on the national debt. It got to the point where even the Federal Reserve thought that the debt on the national debt was ridiculous. It was just to the point where, and the Democrats did not want to be burdened with people pointing to Barack Obama having spent more money than any human being in the history of time and space. But they didn't want to deal with a $20 trillion deficit. You notice nobody's talking about the deficit. You notice nobody's talking about it. Notice everybody still says it's 18 or 17 or whatever else because they simply stopped the counter back in March. So what? There's just no more interest on the national debt, or the Federal Reserve decided that, well, enough's enough. The East Coast looks like a write-off. Clearly, we're also heading straight for a race war in this country, and that is the reason for Jade Helm to be in operation now. So that the resources are in the field, training and ready when everything commences. It will most likely start in the old deep South and move right up the eastern seaboard all the way to Boston. As far as you go, my friend, be away from Los Angeles at the first sign of danger any place in the country, as Los Angeles will become a massive open-air shooting gallery. Now, let me comment on this. First off, the Deep South has no real history of rioting. I mean, you can look at the Selma March, and again, nobody was killed at Selma. A couple of people got beat up, but nobody was killed at Selma. Where have been the worst riots? The worst riots have been Detroit. They've been Boston. They've been not Boston, but Detroit and Baltimore and Missouri. The massive rioting has always been in the Union states, never in the South. It's a very strange phenomenon. I mean, point me a massive race riot that's occurred. I mean, maybe.
Well, wasn't Birmingham, Alabama, the big one where the whole city burned down? It was kind of like what predicated the Civil Rights Act of '64. Is that it?
No, I may be wrong. I may be wrong. Stop me if I am.
That would be the only one, and thus being the exception, not the rule. But I am saying that I know that was somewhere in Alabama was that big that big riot that mattered.
Right. So here he says, while I was in Europe, they were discussing the problem of Arabs and North African immigrants. And I'm sorry I'm stopping this, but I have to give you some interesting sidelights into this. There's two books that I wrote in another series. I've got two series, which is Sands of Time, which is all about Dr. Ted Humphrey and about Area 51 and Dulce and all the inner shadow government. But the other books that I've written, Black Seraph and The Dark Prophet, Veil of the Antichrist, these were Vatican spy novels, if you will. And I have a lead character in that named Father Dominic Lindquist, who's part Bedouin, part Irish, and he works as a spy for the Jesuits as their top agent, if you will, infiltrating the Arab terror networks. And the first book, Black Seraph, is basically about and it was written back in 2004, is about a gene bomb. It's about him stealing a genetic weapon that could be designed to only kill certain races or species of people by actually attacking the DNA. You could drop a bomb on Israel, as an example, that would only kill Russians and Eastern European, mixed Mongolian Ashkenazics, as an example, which I guess we would call the white Jews there, as opposed to the actual Jews that are really related to the ones in the Old Testament, which are called Sephardic, not Ashkenazic Jews. They're called Sephardic Jews because they're the ones that actually mixed with the North Africans there, and with with the Phoenicians and the Assyrians and the Philistines and all that. So my second book, though, which was it was Birmingham, Alabama, in 1963. You're absolutely right. It was, but that was the one major deadly riot, and and I'm still not so sure whether or not, I think there was like only 18 people killed or something, but it was just as
property damage was enormous. Like the whole city like burned, and because the firemen were mostly focusing their water cannons on the black people as opposed to the fires.
Well, here he says it's going to happen there. It's going to happen there again. In my book, The Dark Prophet, the whole point of the book is you have an Islamic prophet who comes out of Iran. He finds a second book that was written by Muhammad, which is absolutely true. Muhammad wrote first he wrote the Quran, and then he wrote the Quran, and then he wrote another book called The Alienation of the Rose, and it was also called the Book of Truth as well. Now, the Book of Truth, of interest, was used as a book that brought peace between the peoples of the book. And the version of Islam we have today is so completely anathema to what it used to be. Between the 8th, 9th, and 10th centuries, Cordoba, Spain was a brilliant shining beacon to civilization. It was all the Christians and all the Muslims and all the Jews all get along. They were all called the people of the book because they were all basically descendants of Abraham, if you will, and people seem to completely forget, especially radical Islam as well, that Jesus is a main prophet in the Quran as well. You have Moses who gave us the law, you have Jesus who showed us the way to heaven, and they believe that Muhammad was the one who came and interpreted the law and showed us how to live. And Sharia law, when it was properly applied in these centuries, led to a brilliant age of science and technology, and as I said, Cordoba, Spain had gaslit streets and hot and cold running water and advanced ophthalmology and brain surgery and all this, when the rest of the Europeans were rolling around eating grubs in the mud going, oh, there's a lovely piece of filth over here. So in my book, Dark Prophet, which you can get, by the way, if you want to order it on the website, it's a fantastic. It's Lawrence Arabia meets James Bond, but it's primarily about how this prophet then unites Islam, which is single-handedly the biggest terror that the West faces, is that you have 1.2 billion Muslims who all suddenly get along. And if they start getting along and stop fighting each other, then they're going to turn and they're going to start fighting us. And when they start fighting us, the way they're going to do it is you no longer need guns and tanks and bombs and missiles and all this to fight war. What you need is immigration. What you need is polygamy, basically, which is what they're doing. And they're moving up into Europe and they are breeding like rabbits. And once again, they have a polygamous aspect where one guy and 4 wives, he can trick up 25, 30 kids in an afternoon. I'm saying you can raise your own civilization pretty damn quick. So in my book, my guy, Dominic Lindquist, also known as Abdul the Bandit, has to find a way to not only discredit the scripture that he's found or coming up with, but he has to be able to destroy the reputation of the man first and discredit the scripture at the same time without making this guy a martyr. And what does he do? He links Islam together, and then he has all of these Islamic fanatics all ooze up into Cordoba, Spain, basically retaking the Caliphate of Spain, where the Muslims were driven out by Charles the Hammer Martel somewhere in the 12th century. So this book is all about the immigration problem. Basically, it's the Roman Empire, which fell because the Visigoths were an uncontrollable immigration force. And I've got some more stories on that for you today, because Jerry Brown just signed into law saying that the word illegal alien is illegal to use in California. And it's beyond the pale, this guy. I can't believe it. You can't say the word alien anymore in regards to undocumented aliens who are in this country, that the state will employ them when supposedly he's just going to declare some kind of emergency. I've got that story for you a little bit later on, but let me finish this, where he says, when I was in Europe, they were discussing the problem of Arabs and North African immigrants. Each day, there is more and more violence in what used to be peaceful countries. The Dutch want to completely close their borders. England is ready to bail on the European Union and will, if they need to, just to deport all the illegals in England. Now, the other challenge of this is that Britain in 1945 was 98% Anglo-Saxon, and now they're facing the fact because of completely diminishing. Nobody wants to have kids in England anymore. There's no reason to. Now they're looking at minority in their own country. So, hey, whenever they talk about minorities on the news, I raise my hand and Melissa raises her hand saying, hey, that's us, because we're now minorities in LA County and white people make up less than 50% of the population. So where's our free stuff? The Dutch want to close their borders. England is ready to bail on the EU and will, if they need to, just to deport all the illegals in England. Austria is also looking at the same thing. 5 or 6 countries are carefully reviewing cost of getting out of the European Union and going back into their own currency systems. Yeah, like the Greeks as an example. By the way, I might want to point out that every single country that there's people in there. There's people in there. People in there. Are there people in there? Toastmasters. Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. Yes. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm sitting at a table outside of the Toastmasters thing answering people's questions. So if the current administration cannot interject another war into the Middle East, this is Obama now, they will have no way of defending against the economical collapse that will transpire without it. Boeing is actually looking at moving its operation offshore and its entire administration. What does that tell you? Cliff High and I wanted to put on some kind of seminar, some kind of talk in Washington, and Cliff gave up because he realized that the taxes were so onerous in Washington State that there was no way for us to put a seminar together without the state taking something like 60% of the profits. All right, Mr. X here says at the end, Congress left on recess without establishing the Import-Export Bank's charter. You have to understand how huge that is. They went on recess. They went on vacation without reestablishing the Import-Export Bank's charter. So this has killed over $2 billion worth of business to major players in what's called the IMDE complex. That's this month alone. Can you imagine the next month and a half without it? Because they're not going to be able to reestablish it because they're all on vacation doing whatever scummy things they do. Now, here it goes on. The secret meeting that I attended at their request in Paris was about how they get the spies out of their field teams and restructure these field teams without anyone noticing. OSCE knows they have a problem and their credibility is suffering for it greatly. I don't exactly know what OSCE is. Maybe you guys could look it up for me. Leaks in their intelligence agencies are so common right now that the use of classification of documents isn't even working. Facebook and Twitter have facts and information before they even presented to those who are waiting for them. I am not sure of the date that you are giving, but I agree with the underlying assumption that mid-September will be a dire time for everyone. There we go. Who calls me on the phone this time? So there it is. I don't know what else to tell you other than it's this September just looks like, and as I said, it's only the beginning. This is just the beginning. It's not really going to get bad until after the elections next year. That's when things are going to get really, really wild.
Sean, there is something called the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. That's
it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't quite know what that was. Yeah, Operation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Exactly right. And my guy just went to a secret meeting over there because they have so many spies within basically Arab spies within their network. They don't know what to do.
Here's the official webpage for that group.
Okay. Thank you. Let's take a look at this, shall we? Just because. All right. So their webpage actually states here. Wow, it rotates. Okay, here we go. Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, commemorating 40 years of the Helsinki Final Act. It's basically just a webpage. It just says what they do. It's basically the police. It's the international police. I think they took over for Interpol. I think this is what Interpol actually became. OSCE response to, they see they've got these white helmets, response to crisis in and around the Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when this came up, I thought it was very interesting because Edgar Mitchell was a friend of mine, is a friend of mine, was a good friend of my dad's, and we spent time sitting in my dad's hot tub drinking scotch a long time ago. So whenever a story comes out about Edgar, one of the true American heroes, he says, "You don't know the area like I do," he said to an interview online. Now this is kind of weird what he says, because right here Edgar Mitchell states, there we go, Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the surface of the moon, has made the astonishing claim that aliens came to Earth to stop a nuclear war between America and Russia. Edgar Mitchell, a veteran of the Apollo 14 mission in 1971, told Mirror Online that top-ranking military sources spotted UFOs during weapons tests. The astronaut has been outspoken about his belief in aliens ever since he landed on the surface of the moon, becoming one of the most prominent figures in the most prominent figures in the worldwide UFO community. That statement's not true, really. Being outspoken about his belief in aliens, in the 1970s, he didn't say any of that. He came around a long time later. I mean, I've asked him several times because he poo-pooed this whole thing and this entire idea about any sort of conspiracy and anything that had to do with aliens or whatever else. And then he just turned around and really changed his tune. I don't know what made him do that, but in my conversations with him between 1977 and 80, he never talked about any of this stuff. But he did tell U.S. military insiders had seen strange craft flying over missile bases in the famous White Sands facility where the world's first ever nuclear bomb was detonated in 1945. Mitchell grew up in New Mexico near both the bomb testing zone and Roswell, where believers think one of the world's most famous UFO encounters took place. You don't know the area like I do, he said in an interview with Mirror Online. They wanted to know about our military capabilities. My own experience talking to people has made it clear the ETs have been attempting to keep us from going to war and help create peace on Earth. Mitchell also suggested that he had heard similar stories from people who manned missile bases during the most tense parts of the 20th century. I have spoken to many Air Force officers who worked at these silos during the Cold War. They told me UFOs were frequently seen overhead and often disabled their missiles. Other officers from bases on the Pacific coast told me their test missiles were frequently shot down by alien spacecraft. There was a lot of activity in those days. Online, we asked Nick Pope, a former Ministry of Defense UFO researcher, whether he believed Mitchell's claims. Nick said, Edgar Mitchell is an honorable and truthful man who I've had the privilege of meeting, but so far as I'm aware, most of his information on this issue comes not from things he's experienced himself, but from things he's been told by others. Actually, that's exactly what I was going to say about what he just said. Clearly, because of who he is, he's had access to government, military, and intelligence community personnel at the highest level, but because, quite understandably, he won't name his sources, we can't be certain these people were being straight with him or indeed that they were privy to any classified information about UFOs. Pope then said, the idea that peace-loving extraterrestrials are here to warn humanity about our destructive ways is popular with those who take a New Age view of the UFO phenomenon. It's a nice thought, but if I'm being skeptical, I'd point out that it's almost exactly the plot of the classic 1951 sci-fi movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. There have certainly been some intriguing UFO sightings around nuclear facilities and around military bases more generally, but an alternative explanation is that some of these sightings are attributable to espionage activities involving secret spy planes or drones. Given that the universe is around 14 billion years old, if we're being visited, it's unlikely we're dealing with a civilization just a few hundred years ahead of us, so stories of aliens managing to disrupt a few of our weapons tests are far-fetched. Chances are they'd be millions of years ahead of us and could do anything they wanted. So there you go. Meanwhile, a breed of parrot, thought to be extinct since the early 20th century, has been rediscovered. Scientists in the Australian state of Queensland had long believed that the rare night parrot was no more. But the breed, endemic to Australia, was feared extinct after there was no recorded sightings after 1912. But the discovery of two dead birds between 1990 and 2006 only added to the belief that the parrot, like in the Monty Python sketch, was no more. But there was a glimmer of hope in 2013 when wildlife photographer and naturalist John Young captured a few seconds of video footage of a live bird. And now the find has been backed up by the live capture and tagging of the elusive bird in a move that is seen as the holy grail for ornithologists. The ground-dwelling parrot has been named Pedro. It is so rare that ornithologists have kept secret the exact details of its location on the remote stretch of 56,000 hectares of land where it was spotted. And they're trying to raise funds to buy the land to actually now keep the bird safe, which is actually very sweet, very nice. So, night parrot expert Dr. Steve Murphy, who helped to confirm the discovery, is thrilled. I've been fascinated with night parrots ever since I was a small kid, he told Bush Heritage Australia. It's their story that grabbed me and what it represented about what's happened to Australia since the arrival of the Europeans. We've lost more native animals than anywhere else on Earth, and for a lot of years we thought we'd lost this one as well. So there you go. What do you think? Just Lion's Revenge. Tippi Hedren is perhaps best known for her role in the Alfred Hitchcock classic The Birds, but as many Hollywood celebrities are wont to do, Hedren channeled her fame and success into something well beyond what normal people would consider acceptable. On the one hand, we can be thankful she didn't turn to drugs and alcohol like so many others. On the other, it's perhaps a little more troubling that she has now opted to spend a fortune on a lion, and not the kind of lion that you send $3 away to, get pamphlets about its shots and feel good about. Tippi Hedren and her family welcomed a whole new member of their family into the fold. They Neil the lion. So there you are. Good on you, Neil the lion. So that story goes a lot of nowhere. All right, since it's always and since we're dealing with this unusual stuff right now, it's always interesting to see what. Well, first let's see what John Kerry was saying. We had this in a clip. And I think, Steve, if you want to line this clip up where Kerry's actually saying it, I know he's the world's he's the world's dullest man. He looks like makes George Norrie look like the life of the party. But John Kerry warns dollar will cease to be reserve currency of the world if the Iran deal is rejected. Okay, so another source, a canned name that happens to be the head of the film company that we're trying to put together.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, he's talking to these big time currency guys, and when I gave him the date of October 20th and told him some very weird things were going to go on, he went out and checked on it, and he says, "Look, you're absolutely right. Something's going to start happening about between September 15th and about October 20th. I'm sorry, it's Vegas. I'm not used to being up during the day. And about October 20th, and his exact words were, Americans should look forward to having a different kind of currency in their wallet." So here we have John Kerry. We took her to the hospital on Saturday, and we had a really interesting doctor. He was from Bulgaria, and his name was Dr. Angel Angelou from Bulgaria. Hello, I'm Dr. Angel Angelou, from Los Angeles via Bulgaria. So he gave her some antibiotics. He gave her some Z-Pak, apparently the most advanced form of whatever the antibiotics for this gunk is, but she has bronchitis, which in essence has turned into walking pneumonia. So she was in bad shape. And so anyway, we love you, honey, and everybody here is praying for you. And I wanted to say thank you so much to everybody from the Revolution Radio family. You know, Angela, Noreen, and Steve, and all those people who sent good wishes for her to get better. So it's just a weird thing. She had like this literally physical burning pain around her heart, and of course I try to get her to take vitamins and try to take care of herself, and she just won't. So anyway, I just hope she gets better soon, and just want to say thank you for listening and thank you for being my girl. So there you go, Melissa, get better. All right, where were we? We're talking about John Frankenstein Kerry. And he's Herman Munster. I don't know how Herman Munster became our Secretary of State, but that's him. And there are a few truisms about the world economy, but for decades, one of them has been the role of the United States dollar as the world's reserve currency or principle of American economic policy. I mean, after all, who wouldn't want their currency to be the one that foreign banks and governments want to hold in reserve? But new research now reveals that what was once a privilege for the United States has become a burden, undermining job growth, punching up budget and trade deficits, and inflating financial bubbles. To get the American economy on track, the government needs to drop its commitment to maintaining the dollar's reserve currency status. So the reasons are best articulated, which, by the way, the banks don't want to have happen at all. It's good for them. It's bad for us. So the reasons are best articulated by Kenneth Austin, a Treasury Department economist, in the latest issue of The Journal by Post-Keynesian Economics. Needless to say, it's his opinion, not necessarily the department's, on the assumption that you don't have The Journal on your coffee table. Allow me to summarize what they're saying. It is widely recognized that various countries, including China, Singapore, and South Korea, suppress the value of their currency relative to the dollar to boost their exports to the United States and reduce its exports to them. They buy lots and lots of dollars, which increases the dollar's value relative to their own currencies, thus making all their exports to us cheaper and our exports to them more expensive. So they kick our ass in the world trade market. But in 2013, America's trade deficit was about $475 billion, and its deficit with China alone was $318 billion. And though Mr. Austin doesn't say it explicitly, his work shows that far from being a victim of managed trade, the United States is a willing participant through its efforts to keep the dollar as the world's most prominent reserve currency. So all that being said, hang on, caller, we'll be there. But dethroning King Dollar would be easier than people think. America could, for example, enforce rules to prevent other countries from accumulating too much of our currency. In fact, others do that precisely to avoid exporting jobs. The most recent example is Japan's intervention to hold down the value of the yen when central banks in Asia and Latin America started buying Japanese debt. Of course, if fewer people demanded dollars, interest rates, what America would pay people to hold its debt, might rise, especially if stronger domestic manufacturers demanded more investment. But there's no clear empirical negative relationship between interest rates and trade deficits, and in the long run, as Mr. Pettis observes, countries are with balanced trade or trade surpluses tend to enjoy lower interest rates on average than countries with large current account deficits, which are handicapped by slower growth and higher debt. So go ahead and play that clip of John Kerry and see what he has to say.
Are you kidding me? The United States is going to start sanctioning our allies and their banks and their businesses because we walked away from a deal, and we're going to force them to do what we want them to do even though they agreed to the deal we came to? Are you kidding? That is a recipe quickly, my friends, for them to walk away from Ukraine, where they are already very dicey and ready to say, well, we've done our bit. They were ready, in many cases, to say, well, we're the ones paying the price for your sanctions. It was Obama who went out and actually put together a sanctions regime that had an impact. I went to China. We persuaded China, don't buy more oil. We persuaded India and other countries to step back. Can you imagine trying to sanction them after persuading them to put in place sanctions to bring Iran to the negotiating table? And when they have not only come to the table, but they made a deal, we turn around and nix the deal and then tell them you're going to have to obey our rules on the sanctions anyway. That is a recipe very quickly, my friends, business people here, for the American dollar to cease to be the reserve currency of the world, which is already bubbling out there.
So there you go. Well, more trade might raise prices. There's no reason it should persistently increase the inflation rate. We might settle into a norm of 2 to 3% inflation versus the current 1 to 2%, but that's a price worth paying for more and higher quality jobs, more stable recoveries, and a revitalized manufacturing sector. The privilege of having the world's reserve currency is one America can no longer afford. And I'm not sure about my opinion about the Iran deal. On the one hand, you've got Obama and Kerry behind it, and we all know who's behind them, which is Valerie Jarrett, who's a radical Muslim who wants to use the religious freedom of the United States to destroy the United States on the one hand. On the other hand, you've got 47 people in the Senate, and you've got the Israelis hopping mad about it. So I think anything that makes the Israelis mad might be a good thing. But I don't know. Who knows? The whole thing sounds dangerous and stupid. And let's just hope the Iranians love their children too. Okay. Couple of things. I've been kind of waiting for this actually, and it's sort of a fun story. But also another interesting thing about September 15th is, for those of you that know anything about Patrick Flanagan, Patrick Flanagan has worked on something that he calls the Neo, which is the Neo Neurophone. Now, my buddy Greg Sherman in New York actually gave me a sort of older Model T model of the Neurophone, and it's pretty cool. You put this thing on your forehead, and you can hear music in your head. It actually goes beyond the inner ear and goes directly into your brain. And the idea is that you're supposed to be able to put things in it, tapes and whatever, like, I don't know, maybe a language or something. Maybe I'll just wake up speaking nothing in Spanish today. But they're locked for Monday, September 15th. I think the 15th is a Tuesday, actually. Oh, what is this? Oh, this is from last year. What are we talking about? He says, they must have got this wrong. We're locked for Monday, September 15th, 2014, noon, for Neo Neurophone to blast off. All right, well, then there you go. I was totally wrong, but it's an old ad on the Sorcia Fall website. I thought these were.
This is a device that transmits audio straight to your third eye.
Straight into your brain, yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, you're putting it right in the forehead. To me, that's just like, the third eye.
But you don't have to put it on your forehead. You can actually put it on your arm, and you'll hear it in your head.
Really?
Yeah, you can put it anywhere on your body, and this thing will actually play the music anywhere. You can put this on your butt, and you can actually hear it in your brain, which means you automatically become a Democrat or something. I don't know.
Ah.
Okay, yeah, all right.
So you're supposed to talk out your ass, not listen out your ass.
Exactly. So there we go. But let me ask you a question. Okay, so here we go. I was just wanted to see what was up with Sorcia Fall. Okay, so here's August 8th. I just thought we hadn't talked to Sorcia in a while, so here we go. As you know, with Sorcia Fall, Sorcia is supposedly the Sisters of Sorcia Fall are a group of Irish nuns who somehow on a long, cold Siberian night managed to befriend a bunch of FSB Russian spies. And they all become friends, and hilarity ensues. It sounds like more like the premise for a situation comedy, but instead she's got a website that millions of people read. So here we go. Sorcia Fall, which is probably a guy named Dave Bloom, but I like reading it because he or she puts a lot of cool stuff together. An astounding new report being circulated in the Kremlin today by the Ministry of Defense states that significant elements of the newly created Aerospace Defense Forces, or VKO, they have the VKO, of the 22nd Spetsnaz, Special Force. The Spetsnaz are like the badass Green Berets, they train by kicking each other in the stomach, that sort of thing, are currently being deployed throughout the Islamic Republic of Iran and are in conjunction with the army of the Guardians of the Islamic Revolution. Never even heard of them. The IRGK, to inspect, identify, in quotes, items within the massive debris field that resulted from the 31 July shoot-down of what they claim to be an alien spacecraft. According to the report, the near catastrophic meteor impact occurring in Iran on 31 July, which set off a 5.2 magnitude trembler, was in fact a coordinated Federation Iranian successful intersection of an unidentified alien, that word's illegal in California, spacecraft, whose extraterrestrial entities are known to be working with certain elements of the United States military against both Russia and Israel. The identification of this alien spacecraft, this report continues, was made by VKO forces on 29 June after it attempted to attack and destroy another spacecraft entering the atmosphere of our Earth over the state of Texas, which we reported on 9 July. Jade Helm 15 war exercise linked to Nordic alien UFOs invading Texas. And she connected that to some photos of these weird Borg-like cubes that were being photographed coming out of this weird dark dimension. So while maintaining constant surveillance since 29 June of this known to be hostile spacecraft, VKO experts in this report state analysts circulating its orbit determined it could be intercepted in its orbital path by Cosmos 249 and 2504 on 31 July as it passed over Iran. Hang on, callers, be right with you. Upon the determination that this spacecraft could be intersected, Federation leadership elements contacted their Iranian counterparts, who then dispatched to Moscow the head of the IRGC, Major Qasem Suleiman, on 24 July to coordinate the taking down of the hostile entity. And as it is illegal under Federation law to quote from any MOD report the existence of the Cosmos space weapon satellites, various public news sources do note that they can be likened to space assassins due to their ability to maneuver, and that by their unique characteristics, many believe that Russia is preparing for a space war by placing it into orbit. Let me see. Last but not least, with coordinated plan in place to take down the spacecraft over Iran, Cosmos 2491-2504 made a successful intersection of it, causing it to break into numerous fragments. Of the worst effects to people in the massive debris field, was the region around Mandi Mashar, where the main propulsion unit of the craft fell, generating a heat field described as causing the hottest temperatures ever endured by mankind, as the temperature skyrocketed to an unbelievable 164 Fahrenheit before it was extinguished by forces using special measures. As to how the VKO was able to identify the alien spacecraft as being hostile and needing to be intersected was due to its being previously identified as being the same type of craft that landed during a broad daylight in Vorenz on 27 September of 1989. And was piloted by 9-foot-tall giant extraterrestrial entities. As to why the United States has aligned itself with the giants of old whom were last expelled from Earth when their second atmosphere was destroyed, thus creating the Great Flood, President Putin's stance is made clear. As we reported in our 3rd August report, Putin orders massive response after alien space fleet spotted over Japan. Well, there you go. There's Vladimir Putin saving the day again. Also, due to the shoot down over Iran of one of their craft that both NASA and the U.S. media are continuing to cover up, more reports of who the exact combatants in this final war for our planet are will most certainly be revealed much sooner than later. Okay, we've got whoever called first, 360 online. Thank you for being patient. How you doing? 360, how you doing? Caller.
No, it's Sticks down here at the boat, Sean. You got me?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I got you.
Oh, okay. All right. What I don't understand about this thing with Iran, number one, they have their own money system, don't they?
I think they operate. What do they operate on? I think they're all the dinar.
Oh, North Korea. Certain countries have their own money system. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I thought that was the deal. That's why we're against it. Well, not us, but the U.S., but the Israelis or whatever.
There are only 3 countries left right now that I know of that are not directly connected to the Rothschild SWIFT code system. In other words, having central banks.
Well, they got to be one of them. Why will we, like you say, the media is all controlled and everything like that. I guess that's one of the reasons, right?
Right. Well, Iran, the only ones that I know of are Iran, Cuba, and that might change, and North Korea. Those are the only 3 currently now. And of course, the first thing on the table for the United States as part of their diplomatic retrofit, if you will, or restart with the Cubans, is to put them on the SWIFT code system, is to basically have the Rothschilds come in and take over their central banking system, which I'm not sure the Cubans are too hip on right now. But those are the only 3.
Right, and then I heard other sources also about the Clear Channel. The Rothschilds are, you look at the weather, is ridiculous. It's just, and they're also involved. People don't seem to realize this, they're involved with the Weather Channel, and they manipulate and just say anything. Just say anything. The CNN, the CIA, and everything is debunked. And we get a Coke commercial, a beer commercial every 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You don't hear about the thing up in Alaska or who knows what. It just goes on 24 hours a day, and I got my boat ready to go, and got 6 months worth of food. But where do we go? Up to Oxnard, up there to the islands? You're in the same predicament, Sean. You better not wait till the last 5 minutes. I got those. We got a friend with that. The planes over El Segundo. Those hydro. The ones with the engine on it.
Right. Yes.
That's what you better get, and then get on your 40, 50, 60-foot yachts, and get, I don't know.
Everybody just sails to Hawaii.
You're the ones with all the dates to predict ahead of time, right?
Yeah. Well, you'll notice.
No one believes you. You think I'm nuts,
Yeah.
As you say, L.A. I think L.A. is a very hot spot for when they cut the electric off, and who knows, Well,
it hasn't happened yet, and even during major earthquakes and all that. And for example, we're overdue for something now. Southern California usually has a major earthquake about every 17 years. You had the Silmar quake, and then about 17 years later, you had the Northridge quake. But I think with the Northridge quake was so violent in its epicenter, And I'm convinced after predicting the quake and where it was going to be and what was going to happen with it, that the Northridge quake was artificial, was a controlled roll, if you will, as they call it, for them to relieve all kinds of pressure off the San Andreas.
Oh,
So,
do you have your gyrocopter on the top of the apartment over there?
No, I don't have a gyrocopter.
Or, I mean, that thing comes in like when it hit Alaska or, like that typhoon in Japan, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, it's true. And actually, I remember looking out my window in Hermosa Beach as they were putting up a sign that said that this was a typhoon or tidal wave escape route. And 9 days later, we actually had an actual tidal wave. It was only I think it was only 3 feet high. It was only 3 feet high. So they were making sure that Ryan Seacrest and Prince and Peter Dinklage, none of them used the beach that day. So but we actually did have a little tiny tidal wave. We had like a 3-foot tidal wave. So they crashed.
I told about it because I think it's that big, Fukushima. And by the way, you forgot to mention they did restart that generator. Did you hear about that over there?
Yeah, the Daihatsu generator, the Fukushima.
Yeah, they started that. And 2 other major points I want you to remind people of the fluoride. 2 cities said no. Was I think it was Dallas and up in Colorado too. And of course, no press in any of that.
Okay, what else you got, boss? Anything else?
Shocked at the boat ready. You come on down there, you can fit in, but you get me a fighting weight. We get bring 100 cans of tuna, and I guess that's all for a go.
Yeah. Well, the only way I think we're prepared for the apocalypse is we have a lot of cat food. So we have to eat cat food before we eat the cats. And I love cats, so maybe people should call in with recipes.
The Koreans eat them.
Never eat my cats.
Yeah.
So
No, I don't know. I mean, but I think, all this hemp might save the world, but, because the Rothschilds ain't going to like that either,
Well, once again, I think that what's going to have to happen is it looks like they're willing to actually forcibly do something.
What do you think? Do you think we'll make it past September? You think we'll make it past September?
Yes, we will. I keep telling you that it starts in September. Everybody has these apocalyptic
visions. That's the devaluation of the money. People, better convert.
But look, the real collapse is going to come after the elections. From everything, from all the charts that I have.
Oh yeah, they got it.
After elections in 2016, one way or another.
That's right, and don't forget, it's not Obama. People, get this in your mind. He's not your president. His name is Obama Man. I keep telling everybody that. The Obama Man, because him and all his cronies and every one of those SOBs just make you throw up at everything that you think about. They're responsible or they're entangled with it.
Well, no matter what happens with the debates, what happens with the primaries, I'm telling you, the guy that's going to be president of the United States for real in 2016 is going to be Dick Cheney, because it's Dick Cheney now, and it's been Dick Cheney in the past.
Part of it, but we want to get.
He's going to be gay, and then they just started being terrible. All right, I haven't heard from in the kind of interesting lunatic file, if you will. Haven't heard from Cobra in a long time. We got to get him back on the show, and a couple of things as far as announcements go. Number one, we have 2 cruises coming up for you. Both of them you can connect to through newlifecruise.com. We've got the New Life Cruise coming, that's going to be October 29th through November 5th, and that's going to be from Florida, from Fort Lauderdale specifically, and that's going to be to Roatan, Belize, and all around the Caribbean and the Yucatan. It's a fantastic swimming with dolphins, snorkeling. It is an amazing itinerary that I hope everybody can come on. The boat is selling out very, very quickly, and so once again, leaves from Fort Lauderdale to an amazing itinerary all through the Pirates of the Caribbean cruise. So that's newlifecruises.com, or go on my Strange Universe website to, come party with me. They're gangs of fun. I don't hide. I like being out there with everybody and being out there with the people. Also, coming up in January, that's for the East Coast people. For the West Coast people, if you want to come and have some amazing fun, leaving from the port of Los Angeles, also known as Long Beach. How it became the port of Los Angeles, Long Beach, is a whole other story. But if you want to come on spiritualcruise.com or go to divinerevelations.com, we have a conspiracy cruise where we've got some of the top conspiratoriologists. I don't know. Steve had a name for it that was better, I think.
I
But
say conspiriologist, but that's
conspiriologist as opposed to conspiratoriologist, but that's a whole other thing. So they're all going to be coming with us from January 25th and then 7 days after that, leaving from the port of Long Beach and going down the Mexican Riviera. And anything you'd ever want to know about vaccines and chemtrails and conspiracies and medicine and pharmacy, it's a fantastic ship of fools. And so that's coming up very soon. So please come with me, the Sean, into paradise and have a chance to not only cruise, but be entertained with some of the most amazing and brilliant people in the world. So once again, we have the Conspiracy Cruise that's coming up in January of 2016, and we have the New Life Expo Sail into Spirituality, and that's coming up, as I said, that's coming up fairly soon. That's going to be October 29th. So, all right, here's what Cobra has to say. Cobra has a website. Once again, try to give everybody their due here. This is being reproduced on the Rumor Mills News Reading Room, but Cobra himself says sublunar operations update. This is from August 6th. Sublunar operations continue. Most of the plasma generators and plasma strangelet bombs on man-made satellites have been disabled, including those of the 13 NROL-39 Octopus satellites, according to him. And he gives a link to Conscious Life News. Beyond Reach, Evil Octopus Strangling World becomes latest intelligent seal. That's kind of interesting. Hang on. Okay, I might have to sneeze. If I do, I don't want to blow you guys out. So here, as an interesting sideline story, the Nothing is Beyond Our Reach, Evil Octopus Strangling the World becomes latest U.S. intelligence seal. Okay. Oh my God, they're exactly right. Well, actually, this has been around for a while. This is the National Reconnaissance, the NROL. Oh, I think I have this seal. Billions of dollars annually are being used to fund operations conducted by the United States intelligence community, the likes of which allow the government to eavesdrop on emails, listen to world leaders' phone calls, and about everything in between. One thing that budget hasn't bought, however, is subtlety. The United States National Reconnaissance Office launched a top-secret surveillance satellite into space Thursday evening, and the official emblem for the spy agency's latest mission is, well, certainly accurate, to say the least. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence live tweeted Thursday's launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, and throughout the course of the ordeal, made no effort to ignore the logo for the NROL-39 mission. The latest spy satellite to be sent into orbit by the National Reconnaissance Office can be recognized by its seal, an evil, yellow, malevolent octopus with a furrowed brow that also happens to be wrapping its tentacles around every corner of the Earth. Nothing is beyond our reach is what it says, and the NRO boasts on the bottom half of the emblem just below the most sinister-looking cephalopod likely ever to be sent into space.
Cthulhu
Oh my God.
2016.
What's that?
Cthulhu 2016.
Yeah, and it's they actually put it on the side of the missile. It's along with the National Security Agency and more than a dozen others. The NRO is one of 16 federal offices under the directive of DNI James Clapper, and is responsible for building and operating these spy satellites used to collect intelligence around the world. NRO gathered intel, was reportedly instrumental in the mission that brought U.S. Navy SEALs to the home of former al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden in 2011. Well, that's a gigantic hoax, so we know that's not true. And decades earlier, the agency launched a school bus-sized satellite into orbit to spy on the Soviets at the height of the Cold War. This time around, the ODNI says the satellite's payload is mostly classified, but did admit over Twitter that around a dozen mini-satellites funded by both the NRO and NASA will be brought along to orbit as well. Another thing they didn't bother to acknowledge, of course, is how the lack of subtlety apparent in the Earth-strangling octopus emblem could quickly be used by critics of the U.S. intelligence community as fodder to further condemn the government for admitting to their sheer and unmatched ability to control the information of the world. Thursday's launch of the latest NRO satellite occurred almost exactly 6 months to the day after the Guardian and Washington Post newspapers published the first of what has since been revealed to be a trove of leaked national security documents showing proof that the National Security Agency's widespread and extensive ability to monitor people around the world. So once again, meaning that Rand Paul is absolutely right, and Chris Christie is a big fat slob. On June 6th, those papers first disclosed evidence in which NASA was documented to demand telephony metadata from millions of people daily, and a steady stream of leaked files attributed to former Intel contractor Edward Snowden have since captivated the world while also raising a number of questions. For half a year now, leaked NSA documents have let the world learn that the U.S. monitors the phone habits of not just Americans, but also foreigners, sitting atop the governments of allied nations. Reporters with access to the cache of pilfered papers have reportedly released only a sliver of what's been reported to be 50,000 documents during those 6 months, but the response has already been widespread. The leaders of countries such as Brazil and Germany have lashed out at the NSA's behavior, and DNI Clapper and his deputy manning the NSA General Keith Alexander have easily become two of the most embattled public figures in Washington. But that being said, you'd think that ODNI would reconsider launching a new spy satellite, or perhaps even not put an octopus strangling the Earth on the outside. You may want to downplay the massive dragnet spying thing right now, said Chris Segoyan, the chief technologist at the American Civil Liberties Union. This logo isn't helping. So according to a top-secret budget document released by Snowden and first reported on in August, the NRO is in the midst of modernizing their signal intelligence, geospatial, and communication system to replace all its current capabilities, which means that they're going to be even better spies. So I got to get that logo for my jacket. I have a jacket that I collect all these logos on. So something is beyond our reach indeed. This has effectively loosened the matrix control over the surface population to the point that intel about advanced spacecraft propulsion system designs have been released both into the mainstream and in the alternative media. So they're talking about an impossible rocket drive works, could get us to the moon in 4 hours. They're now saying that the EM drive of Morton Tajmar generates thrust to test controversial space propulsion tech, and Nasikas thruster light years ahead of the Dawn spacecraft ion propulsion system. That's kind of interesting, and actually I'm going to take a look at that one real quick, because I think this is what they also announced. Yes, I believe it's what they announced that last week. Basically, the thruster is propelled by unbalanced forces due to the effect of the magnetic field on the nozzle. Superconductors expel magnetic field lines, and as a result, an external magnetic field source will exert a force on the superconductor in the so-called Meissner effect. The field lines are more concentrated within the throat. Basically, it's maglev trains levitate on the basis of the Meissner effect, and in maglev, the magnet is attached to the ground and levitates the superconductor. In the Nasikas thruster, the magnet is attached to the superconductor and propels itself and the superconductor together. And of course, this throws Newton's third law and the law of energy conservation completely out the window. And anyway, the Nasikas thruster is currently available for investors interested in aerospace development, and a thrust demonstration experiment has been witnessed by physicists at 2 Greek universities, and physicists from the University of Cambridge, including one Nobel laureate, all agreed that the thruster nozzle develops a thrust towards the apex. Well, that sounds like something that Elon Musk should probably be interested in. It's basically a repulsor ray, so maybe you can build an Iron Man suit out of it. I'm sure the military has that too. Anyway, what's that?
Yeah, Sean, my a buddy of mine was checking out some cool stuff on YouTube at random, and he found. You ever seen the video of the Israeli college students who had made the that anti-gravity stuff that steams off like the liquid nitrogen?
No.
And then the metal floats.
Wow.
Well, a few years ago, they had this tech. This was public. It wasn't like secret space program stuff developed in Israel. And now somebody has taken that tech. I'll get the video footage of both for you. And they've developed it into a skateboard. We finally have the hoverboards that Howard Hughes promised.
Now that I saw. That I actually saw. Was it Howard Hughes or was it Marty McFly?
Well, Howard Hughes made Back to the Future, so it was his promise, because he made a whole campaign where he said oh, we have hoverboards like secret tech from NASA or something. It was all a big marketing scam to get publicity for Back to the Future too.
Anyway, Cobra goes on to say that the Intel release has additionally secured the positive future timeline for humanity and brought us one step closer to the stars, as the future is bright. Sublunar operations will now extend close to the surface of the planet, through the ionosphere and the stratosphere. First, they will begin to disrupt the scalar weather modification programs and mind control programs of the ionospheric heaters around the globe. He then says, well, let me see what he's talking about. So here he says geoengineering. Okay, here we go. The unauthorized history of HARP. Now this goes on a little bit too long here, but maybe not so much. No, okay, it's too much. It's pages and pages of not radio worthy stuff. Actually, it's not that it's not worthy. It's just I can't get to it all in the moments I have left. A network of electromagnetic ionospheric heaters capable of global weather manipulation and artificial climate change. And Cobra has a map here. Then they will extend into the stratosphere, disabling the plasma generators and plasma strangelet bombs inside the radiosondes. Here we go. The breakthrough is near. Very good. Thank you, Cobra. Meanwhile, speaking of breakthroughs and nasty things happening, and we sort of missed it because it was, of course, the 70th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima, and I don't know, it was over the weekend or something. But Russia declassifies the report on the aftermath of the U.S. nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Looks to me like Russia has decided to tell people to know who the real aggressor has been, and it has been Russia. As the police state takes hold around the world, this could be coming humanity's way, then couldn't it? So Russian Historical Society has published a report of the Soviet ambassador to Japan on the aftermath of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki from the Archive of Foreign Policy of Russia in time for the 70th anniversary of the attacks. The report was recorded a month after the attacks, and the following are the highlights of the report. The train terminal and the city of Hiroshima were destroyed so much that there was no shelter to hide from the rain. The city was a scorched plain of 15 to 20 cement buildings left standing. Several dozen thousand people huddled in the dugouts on the outskirts of the city. People who came to help the victims during the first 5 to 10 days died. A month after the bombing, green grass began to grow and new leaves appeared on the burned trees. Grass windows in the cement building of the police department, which was left standing, blew out inward and the ceiling was bulging upwards. The zone of impact was 6 to 8 kilometers, where all buildings were damaged. At 5 to 6 kilometers, mostly roofs were damaged, and some areas were not affected by the rays, suggesting that the energy was expelled unequally by bursts. But some people who were close to the injured did not receive any burns, and this pertains to sections significantly removed from the impact. Everything alive was destroyed in the radius of 1 kilometer. The sound and the flash were heard and seen 50 kilometers away. One person reported seeing a flash and feeling a touch of a warm stream on his cheek and a needle pinch. Many people only had injuries from shattering glass. Burns were mainly on the face, arms, and legs. A doctor reported seeing 3 bombs dropped on parachutes, 2 of which did not explode and were collected by the military. That's interesting. The doctor experienced diarrhea after drinking the water. Other rescuers got sick after 36 hours. The doctor said that in those affected, the white blood cell count reduced from 8,000 per cubic centimeter to 3,000 to 1,000, and even 300, which causes bleeding from the nose, throat, eyes, and the uterus in females. The injured died in 3 to 4 days. The injured who were evacuated healed faster. Those who drank or rinsed with water in the impact area died thereafter. And after a month, it was considered safe to stay in the impact zone. However, it was still not conclusive. According to the doctor, rubber clothing offered protection against uranium, as well as any material which is a conductor of electricity. A girl who visited the area a few days after the blast got sick in 1 to 2 weeks and died 3 days later. Nagasaki is divided into 2 sections by a mountain, and the section sheltered from the blast by the mountain had much less destruction. Japanese driver in Nagasaki said no rescue work was done on the day of the bombing because the city was engulfed in flame. Nagasaki bomb was dropped over a university hospital in Urakami district near a Mitsubishi plant, and all the patients and the staff of the hospital died. The driver said some children who were up on the trees playing survived, but those on the ground, in fact, died. Most people in Hiroshima said the bomb was dropped on a parachute and detonated 500 to 600 feet above the ground. The head of the sanitary service of the 5th American Fleet, Commander Wilcatz, said that no parachutes were used in the dropping of the bombs. He also said no bomb could fall without detonating. Okay, and yet we have eyewitness accounts that that's exactly what happened. He said after the bombing, the zone of impact is safe, and the Japanese are exaggerating the effects of the nuclear bomb. By the way, Japan was trying to surrender, but anyway, the big lie machine. So here we go. The big lie machine, National Public Radio, had a segment which revealed the justifications for using nuclear bombs on Japan. Coincidence? And again, it's not really worth messing with or worth playing around with. Let me see. What else do I have here? Meanwhile, on kind of a slow day. Oh, I have one other thing here. Okay, well, let's see what she has to say again. Huh. Okay. The foreign. This is from about a week ago, but I did get to it. But Queen Elizabeth II orders horror plane shoot down in 9/11 cover-up. The Foreign Intelligence Service (SRV) is currently circulating an astounding new report in the Kremlin, which states that the exposure of Queen Elizabeth as being one of the main financiers of the 11th September 2001 attacks against the United States is becoming more apparent after the assassination shoot down earlier today of an aircraft carrying Sana bin Laden, the sister of the alleged 9/11 mastermind Osama bin Laden, leading to her and her mother's death as well as the death of 2 other people. I'll also point out he had like 60 brothers and sisters, I think. But according to this report, Sana bin Laden was arriving in Britain via Blackbush Airport, Hampshire, aboard her family's private jet aircraft. While even it was nearing the runway for landing, a small missile projectile blew it out of the sky, causing it to fall and explode in a car park. Eyewitnesses to the assassination shoot-down confirmed the strong likelihood of a missile being fired, with one of them, Joe Ramos, stating that he heard its loud bang, while a second witness, Daphne Knowles, stated that 2 other witnesses had told her that the bin Laden plane, quote, had to swerve to miss another aircraft as it went in, which is consistent with what a pilot would do when facing a fast incoming projectile. As to why Sana bin Laden was targeted for assassination was due to her having been recalled for additional testimony before the Iraq inquiry headed by Sir John Chilcot on Monday, August 3rd. The Iraq inquiry is a British public inquiry into the nation's role in the Iraq War, and the inquiry was pursued by a committee of private counselors with broad terms of reference to consider Britain's involvement in Iraq between mid-2001 and July 2009. The open sessions of the inquiry commenced on 24 November 2009 and concluded on 2nd February 2011, but is yet to be released due to a myriad of factors, not the least of which is the Obama regime's fear of it. Nevertheless, even to last week, Sir Chilcot stated that he was making significant progress in the process of Maxwellization, this method by which witnesses likely to be criticized in the report are given a further chance to rebut potential criticism of their behavior. And to this Maxwellization process was Sana bin Laden scheduled to be put through by Sir Chilcot on Monday. But as Sana bin Laden's exact testimony before the Iraq inquiry needing this Maxwellization process were her statements backed up by documented proof provided by French intelligence sources that 2 months before the 9/11 attacks, her brother, Osama bin Laden, was gravely ill and a patient at an American hospital in Dubai. Even more important to note was that Sana bin Laden further testified that 2 CIA officials visited her brother Osama at the American hospital in Dubai, convincing him to be transferred to Pakistan, where he would be given more extensive treatment. You get the idea that Osama bin Laden was just a sucker in this entire thing? Confirmation of Osama's transfer under CIA control to the Pakistani military hospital in Rawalpindi was further provided by U.S. newsman Dan Rather, the anchor for CBS News, who, on his newscast, confirmed that Osama bin Laden was transferred to Pakistan on 10 September 2001, one day before the 9/11 attacks, and for which he lost his job for going against the Bush regime. But to her most sensational testimony before the Iraq inquiry, and which required her assassination, was her stating that the 9/11 attacks were financed by Fahd bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, Prince Fahd bin Salman, and Ahmed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, who is Prince Ahmed bin Salman, utilizing the banking accounts of Queen Elizabeth II, controlled by the Swiss accounting giant KMPG. Critical to note is that Osama bin Laden further testified to the Iraq inquiry that immediately after the CIA, quote, offered / persuaded her brother Osama to move to the hospital in Pakistan, she contacted Prince Fahd bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, who warned her of the 9/11 plot, and which he described as massive oil for weapons, a massive weapons for oil deal. Prince Fahd bin Salman also was then killed 2 days later on 25 July 2001. Now, upon Prince Fahd bin Salman's death, Osama bin Laden, fearing for her family's lives, fled to the protection of Prince Ahmed bin Salman in Lexington, Kentucky, USA, where she became a host on Revolution Radio. No, I'm just kidding. Where she remained until 13 September 2001, when she and her family were then allowed to return to Saudi Arabia. Now remember, everything was grounded at that time, and I think even Michael Moore was the one that was saying that the only people that were allowed to fly after 9/11 were Saudi Arabian Airlines. And as Prince bin Salman was a close friend of Queen Elizabeth II, due to their horse racing and breeding connections, the Lexington, Kentucky horse farm estate where Osama bin Laden and her family took refuge was owned by the South African Dr. John Chandler and his wife Alice Headley Chandler, whose horse farms and estates not only watched over Prince Ahmed bin Salman, but Queen Elizabeth as well. Even more tragic was that Osama bin Laden's death was not the only one ordered by Queen Elizabeth II relating to her complicity in financing 9/11, but the former KMPG accountant, Marcy Thomason, was also killed in a plane disaster in Lexington on 27 August 2006 due to her knowledge of how the 9/11 attacks were in fact funded. And Prince Salman had already been assassinated less than a year after 9/11 on 22nd July 2002, and a further conspirator, his cousin Prince Sultan bin Faisal, was killed on the day of the prince's funeral as well. And as to why these Saudi princes would be complicit with the CIA in the 9/11 plot to attack America while funneling their funds through Queen Elizabeth's accounts